IVM.
For all of our listeners, this is a trigger warning because we'll be delving into some sensitive things. Listener discretion is advised. Hello everyone and welcome to Marbles Lost and Found. I'm Zain.
I'm Avanti.
And you might remember that we've asked a number of our listeners before our season began to write in with their own stories and things that they might have been dealing with. And a number of you did, and we're really, really grateful for that. Today we have a couple of emails that we'd like to address. The first one is, we both feel a very insightful
and helpful.
Yes, a very helpful email because this is from someone who is a caregiver, and two immediate members of his family are dealing with some very severe mental illnesses. But what we found was very useful about this is that he got into detail about what the treatment was like and how he's been looking after them and how they've been improving. Because I think, Avanti, for the illnesses that he talks about, there's a lot of room for people to just go, no, this person's just crazy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what he's done is
this person cannot be helped.
Exactly. This person cannot be helped. So what he's done is that he's broken it down in a very constructive way. So I'm going to just pick up this piece of paper and read out bits of the email. I mean, it's a very extensive email, but we will definitely cover the main parts of it. So he says, my mother deals with a condition called delusion disorder. And she has two symptoms, delusions of persecutions or paranoia and delusions of jealousy. In general, delusions are beliefs that a patient holds firmly and refuses to let go even when presented with evidence to the contrary. For example, as part of her delusions of jealousy, she believes that my father is constantly cheating on her. Her persecutory delusions lead her to believe that people, usually extended family, are out to get her by robbing or killing her. I would like to highlight some key aspects of it from the perspective of a loved one and caregiver. 1. The nature of this disorder is such that it can easily go undetected, as someone just being paranoid or someone with an overactive imagination. Moreover, unlike other severe mental illnesses, people with delusion disorder usually continue to have a normal functioning life where outsiders, in other words outside the family, may not even be aware of the existence of this condition. 2. Once diagnosed, please refrain from trying to correct their delusions. You must understand that their delusions are absolutely real to them, and trying to correct their reality does not help them in any way, and you'll only lead to estranging your relationship further. Instead, practice reflective listening when in conversation with them. And Avanti, before I go on, since he doesn't really explore what reflective listening is, could you comment a little bit on what it might be?
It is a therapeutic tool or technique, and it's where you say someone says, I feel like the FBI is after me. I really feel, you can say to them, instead of correcting or whatever, you can be like, it sounds like you feel really persecuted.
Mm-hmm. So
you're
just
reflecting what you're listening.
Right. So kind of just like acknowledging how they're feeling rather than just going, no, that's not the case. Okay. 3, it is essential to combine medication with talk therapy. And that's usually CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy. 4, depending on how long the condition has remained untreated, it may take a long time for the treatment to show any effect. In my mother's case, it took close to 5 months of treatment. During this time, it's easy to lose hope in the treatment and even the doctors. To make it worse, the side effects of the medication on the patient may tempt you to stop the treatment altogether. This by far is the most difficult aspect of any mental illness because as caregivers, we would like to believe that we are doing more good than harm. But lots of times, it does not seem like we are. My advice is to work with a doctor you trust and put your faith in their experience and expertise when they insist on continuing with treatment. Also, quote-unquote, improvement in their condition does not necessarily mean that they will stop believing their delusions. They may never, but they will stop being as agitated with them as they might have been earlier. And I want to emphasize this next point that he says. So do not expect the delusions to go away post-treatment. They may not. Finally, as with any serious mental illness, please discuss their condition with your friends and family. This helps to remove the shame and stigma associated with the condition. Also, if informed, extended family members will know how to properly respond to your loved one when they act on their delusions.
That is so key.
Exactly, it is so key. Which, at their most agitated state, they may. So now, Yeah, I really feel that this particular letter that he's written is a very insightful one. Do you have anything to say right now?
No, I thought it was so eloquently written. It's talked about the pitfalls of treatment too, that, it can take ages. Sometimes it only reduces the severity of the symptom and not the symptom entirely.
Correct.
And that you need everyone to rally around you as a patient.
Mm-hmm.
It can't just be you as an isolated island trying to do this by yourself.
Correct.
And I think he's highlighted all of that really quite beautifully.
Yeah.
Very helpfully.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to acknowledge him as a caregiver, because based on what he's written, it sounds like it has to be extensively difficult. So he sounds like he's doing a very, very good job with his mum.
And also, that it is possible to help.
Absolutely.
In your own way.
Yeah, and I think it was very important to highlight this email simply because with our society, especially with, mental illnesses that might be more obscure, or for lack of a better way to put it, feared or further stigmatized, it's very easy to kind of turn around and say, oh no, this person's beyond repair. But this at least fleshes out a way that you can get better. You can find a way to be functional.
Mm-hmm. And actually, that kind of leads us to in the same email, our listener has written about his brother having being diagnosed with something called schizoaffective disorder.
Right.
It's actually not unusual to have more than one mental illness in the family.
Right.
For several, genetic reasons and learned behavior reasons.
Right.
And so our listener kind of talks about schizoaffective disorder, which is a sort of a combination of elements of bipolar disorder and schizophrenia.
Okay.
So there are aspects of schizophrenia like hallucinations and delusions, and also aspects of mania and depression.
Okay.
So it actually sounds like, quite a tough thing to live with and to help someone with too. And our listener has written that, what's really helped again is a combination of medication and therapy. Medication to really help get his moods and hallucinations under control. Therapy to help build some sort of coping skill.
Right.
And it's taken them about 6 months of treatment. And now they're reaching a point where they're going to try and help him become more self-sufficient, to a point where he can care for himself.
Fantastic.
Because also with schizoaffective, it can be difficult to have a normal functioning life.
Right.
He's put normal in quotes. Mm-hmm. So, it's hard to hold down jobs because your moods can be so erratic that no one really wants you there. Mm-hmm. You may not want to be there sometimes, or you can't be there, etc. It's hard to take care of yourself. Sometimes you don't even realize you're not taking care of yourself with a severe mental illness. Mm-hmm. So that's that actually. And it was, thank you, our listener, for writing this in. And I hope this has been helpful to people.
At least insightful
shed some light.
Yeah, at least insightful for the people who might have been listening to this. And a fair amount of our listeners are probably aware of mental health issues or illnesses like depression and anxiety, but we've also, it's only a little bit in the previous season that we talked a bit about certain other mental illnesses that may be more obscure to people, including schizophrenia and obsessive compulsive disorder and bipolar. I think it's always helpful to have some more knowledge when it comes to this particular issue. Mm-hmm.
And I guess we can go into our next email.
Yeah.
So we've actually had about 3 or 4 emails that kind of talk about sexual abuse. So I'm going to read one of these emails, and we can talk about, Zain and I would like to talk about that a little bit. Mm-hmm. Hey, things are easier to deal with when I get to know that I'm not alone in this. Things seem bearable when I find someone I can relate to. I support you guys, and the whole reason why I've chosen to share my story. I was sexually harassed by my relative when I was 6. Chose to talk about it when I turned 14. I have witnessed domestic violence throughout my childhood. I was diagnosed with epilepsy when I was 6. My medical condition helped me escape a lot of fights at home. I used to get a seizure every time things used to get worse. My seizures did distract them from their fights. I've had anxiety attacks every 3rd day till high school. I spent my childhood worrying about my brother and consoling my mother that everything will be perfect one day. Things at home are much better now, my grades are much better now, and my life seems easier now. But these incidents have had a great impact on me and have shaped me in a lot of ways. I get easily affected with the smallest of things. I've been suffering from depression for the past 1 year, and the feelings have been way too strong for the past few months. Strong enough to make me think about every possible way to kill myself. I love my family, the only people pulling me away from taking the wrong step. I usually don't have a reason for feeling the way I do, but it's intense and sad. I've had phases of let's exercise and stay healthy, let's wake up early in the morning and be positive, meditation, the Om chants, psychiatrist appointments, psychologist sessions. But I give up after a point and everything just goes straight to nightmares, disturbed or no sleep, no showers for days, seizures in sleep and avoidance of my deadlines. My urge to be productive and punctual makes everything worse every now and then.
It's a very powerful email. One thing I want to talk to you about in that last paragraph where she's written a couple of things about how she's been taking a lot of steps but feels that, I suppose, it doesn't really help after a point. Did you have any thoughts on that, reading it as a therapist?
Yeah, I feel that sort of helplessness that she must be feeling, or that the listeners must be feeling now too, that shit, man, this girl's trying to help herself and it's not really working, long term. And for that, I'm looking at all the things she said she's trying, and she said she is doing psychiatrist appointments. And to that, I wonder, maybe there needs to be a lot more tweaking of medication. There needs to be a change in psychiatrist. There needs to be regular follow-ups.
Right.
She said psychologist sessions. Maybe, it's important to find a psychologist who is really working for you. So change your psychologist.
Exactly. Yeah. And the things this is one thing I really want to address with our listeners. We at Marbles urge you guys, if you're considering therapy but not sure, or if you've been to a therapist and it didn't work for you, especially with the latter, please do not make that mean anything about you.
Or that, write off therapy entirely.
Exactly, yeah. That the idea that therapy will not help. It's just as simple as, unfortunately, you found a therapist that just didn't work for you. And it's as simple as that. There could be a number of reasons, but the bottom line is that therapy can work for you. It's just, I can understand how difficult it might be sometimes in order to put your cards on the table with more than one person more than once. But at the end of the day, you are taking a step to look out for yourself, and finding a therapist that works for you is a very, very big step. So don't give up on that. It's a very important thing to acknowledge. And don't you make yourself feel worse because you had a poor experience. It's not about that at all.
Something that stood out to Zain and me while we were reading this is when our listener had a very insightful take. She said that I was diagnosed with epilepsy when I was 6. My medical condition helped me escape a lot of fights at home. I used to get a seizure every time things used to get worse. In fact, my seizures did distract them from their fights. And we see this a lot, in kids. Kids develop a condition. Sometimes it's seizures, sometimes it's an illness, something or the other. That they almost become like a vessel to distract the family from the bigger, more violent, more difficult issue, and to focus the attention on this one ailing kid.
Right, yeah.
And that's really quite fascinating and very insightful to realize that, actually, my seizures I was suffering, but my suffering helped distract them from their suffering too.
It's so unfortunate that sort of onus was put on herself at that age.
It's also subconscious. It's not or unconscious. The onus is unconscious.
Sure. You're right. But I think the fact that she's been able to articulate that now in an email says a lot about how aware she is of herself now.
And this email also speaks about sexual harassment and abuse when she was 6 years old, and how having your boundaries violated at a young age or at whatever age.
Absolutely.
When you're not sure of what is right or wrong, who am I, what is okay for me?
Yes.
And this is a person in a position of power who's kind of doing things to me. So I guess it's okay. I don't know. I'm not sure. Can actually it may not lead to, severe mental illness or, even in many cases like depression or anxiety as such, but it can lead to people questioning their trust, having trust issues. Zain, you said that you've seen it, that people do struggle with trusting people.
Correct. Yes.
And not really knowing where the boundaries lie.
Absolutely. That seems to be a very big thing that at least I've noticed with some people whom I know who have fortunately had these sort of experiences, where there has been a very difficult way of navigating. How can I trust this person? How much can I trust this person? Okay, if I'm trusting this person, am I trusting to the point where it's quote unquote too much, or what? It's a very...
Or sometimes you don't even realize you have those trust issues, quote unquote, until you snap with someone after a minor transgression they make.
Yeah, exactly.
Or and then someone points it out to you and you're like, yo, that's kind of like an extreme reaction.
Maybe, yeah.
And
there's so many ways I suppose it can manifest itself. I think you even briefly spoke about what, apart from trust issues, what other things it could lead to as well, right?
Yes, and in fact, we spoke a little bit, Zain, you and I spoke a little bit about the diagnosis of borderline personality disorder. And it's unfairly kind of disproportionately given to women a lot.
Okay.
And it seems that the reason that is because disproportionately it's women who have reported or have spoken about histories of abuse and then go kind of get help about it or about other things, and then this abuse comes up. And borderline personality is kind of characterized by a difficulty finding trust in people, feeling a chronic emptiness within themselves that you try and fill up with experiences and people, and you're not really able to feel that contentment or satisfaction or stability.
Right.
But I this is all sounding very like, oh, abuse is gonna make you fucked up kind of thing. But that's not what we're saying here. What we're saying here is it can lead you to feel things like you start being sexually active, and then you realize that your sexual feelings are actually tinged with shame and embarrassment and disgust.
Right.
Or that you find yourself getting turned on by things that maybe your friends are not finding
attractive or arousing.
Finding within the realm of what is normal or kosher.
Right.
And maybe that's not working for you, in a functional sense.
Sure.
So it's just more of a case of like, when these things, you notice these things about you, there is stuff you can do about it.
Right, absolutely.
It's not the end of the world and you have to live with that feeling or those patterns at all.
Correct. And speaking of stuff that you can do about it, there was in fact there were a couple of emails actually that we got where one or two people had addressed the fact that they were living in smaller towns and they simply didn't have access to stuff where for treatment, so they could do something about it. So I feel like the main issue over here is like, what can people do about it when they don't have direct access to facilities? And I think it is a very, very hard position to be in. And so there are avenues for online therapy that do exist. We can't vouch for how they are, but there are some in the Indian context as well. Things like Your Dost, for instance.
There's iCall, which is a telephone counseling service that TIS offers.
Yes, exactly. And they also crowdsourced a list of mental health professionals who are trustworthy in and around the city, for instance. Another organization called It's Okay to Talk that usually has a bunch of resources available for people in and around the country who may want access to mental health facilities. There's
your local hospitals.
There's local hospitals.
Sometimes, speaking to a psychiatrist there or your GP over there, they might be able to point you in the right direction. But also, I think, I think what goes missing in a lot of this, talk to a therapist or talk to a psychiatrist, is let's not underestimate or undermine the people in our lives who might be able to be our best counsel. Actually.
Absolutely.
And we never know until we allow ourselves to open up to the people who we instinctively trust.
Absolutely.
To be wise about things.
That was the only reason I started going for therapy in the first place, frankly, because it was only after I started to learn to open up a little bit about myself, which I'd never done before. In fact, in my case, people whom I'd even considered quote-unquote close friends were people whom at the back of my mind I had believed were actually just politely tolerating me. And this had been a belief in my life for, I think, so I'm 30 now, let's say 25 years of that time, okay, was a very strong belief that I had had. And so I never really found it possible to talk to anyone about anything that was bothering me, because then I suppose that would be the excuse to just kind of go like, oh man, I'm done with this guy, enough is enough. So
you felt like you'd be a burden and you're not important enough.
Oh, absolutely. I just always had to be quote unquote on, because I couldn't talk to people. But the things that when I finally discovered that I could back in 2016 thereabouts, was when I kind of said, all right, let me try this out. And I started to go into therapy. And then interestingly enough, after I began and I started to talk to friends more about it, more people started to open up to me. And I just kind of thought, what the hell have I been doing for the past God knows however many years, up until this point.
But even in the absence of, okay, yes, after this I can go to therapy, even in the absence of that resource, opening up that little bit to that person in your life can be enough sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah.
So let's not discount that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And on that note, that's all we have time for today. I'm Avanti.
And I'm Zain. And thank you guys so much for listening in. And also thank you guys so much for writing. And we really, really appreciate it.
Please do some more.
Please do some more. We're always listening. Thank you guys so much. Bye-bye.
Hi, I'm Satyajit.
Hi, I'm Racheta.
We are from the Open Library Project and we host a podcast called Paperback.
Paperback is a podcast where we engage with stalwarts and experts from various industries, suggesting non-fiction titles that contributed to their journey in a big way.
We've had guests like Anjali Raina, Dr. Marcus Rani, Dr. Swati Lodha, Ambi Parmeswaran, Apurva Damani, and many more on our show Paperback. Find new episodes every Wednesday on IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
माणसं गोलगप्प्यासारखी असतात. हाय हॅलो करताना वेगळी आणि बोलताना वेगळी आणि गप्पा मारताना वेगळी, मित्र झाली की वेगळी आणि शत्रू म्हणून वेगळी, थोडक्यात दिसणारी वेगळी आणि असणारी वेगळी, कधी आंबट, कधी गोड, कधी तिखट, तर कधी चमचमीत आणि कधी कधी हॉट अँड स्पायसी सुद्धा. आणि म्हणूनच गप्पा गोल गप्पा विथ तृप्ती खामकर फक्त तुमच्यासाठी दर बुधवारी IVM पॉडकास्टच्या ऍपवर, वेबसाईटवर किंवा युट्यूब चॅनलवर सुद्धा ऐकू शकता. तुम्ही आमचा पॉडकास्ट वेगवेगळ्या पॉडकास्ट प्लॅटफॉर्मवरती ऐकू शकता. फक्त सर्च करा गोल गप्पा विथ तृप्ती खामकर आणि आमचा पॉडकास्ट ऐकत रहा.